So I want to go back over some of the vocabulary that we have started in class. This is really the first section of chapter 1 in your geometry book. And this is kind of the basis of everything that we're going to do. We're going to use these words for the rest of the year. When you're looking at these, I'm not going to ask you to define them. I'm going to ask you to apply them. So I will give you a picture and ask you questions about it, or I will give you a description and ask you to draw it. So I'm just going to take a minute, kind of go back over everything, and then I'm going to work a couple of problems, kind of like the ones that I gave you to do for homework. So let's kind of start at the beginning. So there are three undefined terms in geometry. And they're not undefined in the sense that we can't give a definition. They're undefined in the sense that I can't hand them to you and you hold them in your hand. So they really only exist in geometry world. And that's a point, a line, and a plane. Now, a point is just this location in space. It has no thickness and no width. And so it's not actually a point that you think about, because every point in our whole universe we can measure. Even as tiny as it can be, we can measure it. But in geometry world, this point just represents a location somewhere in space. It has no thickness and no width. So if I have something drawn out, this plane here, and I've got a line inside of it, I'm going to have a point here, and a point here, and a point here. We would name a point by a capital letter. Okay, so if I wanted to name one of these points, I would just call it like point C. You name it with a capital letter. When you name a line, you name it with two letters, and you can go in either order. It doesn't matter. So I could name this line CB, or I could name it BC. Now you also need to realize that between any 2 points there is a line. So there is a line AB. Even though the line is not drawn, it's there, because between any 2 points there is a line. Now sometimes there will be a little lowercase letter out to the side. It's not a point. But you might also name this line R. Okay, so you've got some different options. Now, a point we name with one letter, a line we name with two letters, a plane we're going to name with three letters. Okay, three letters. But those letters have to be three that are not on the same line. Okay, so let's add this. Let's say that there was a D here. You could name this plane CAB, or you could name this plane BAD, but you could not name this CDB. You cannot do that, because you cannot use three letters on the same line to name your plane. Now, sometimes in the bottom corner, actually any corner, there will be a letter, and usually it's italics. And that letter is not a point. It is the name of the plane. So you can also name this plane S. Now, while we're talking about points on the same line, you have two things. You have collinear and non-collinear. So collinear points are points on the same line. So A, B, C. Those are collinear points. Now, any 2 points are collinear. It's the third point is where we decide if they're collinear or non-collinear. So if I said to you from this picture, in this plane over here, in this side, in this plane, are A and B collinear, you would say yes, because any 2 points are collinear. So the non-collinear is when we have this line then we have a point over here. So points A, B, and C are non-collinear. We also have what's called coplanar and non-coplanar. So coplanar are points that are in the same plane. Coplanar, points that are in the same plane. And so if we have this plane, all these points are in the same plane. But if we add maybe a line going through this, then F, so non-coplanar, would be like F, C, D, B. That F is what makes it non-coplanar. So when you're doing this, 3 points are always coplanar. 3 points are always coplanar because 3 points make up a plane. It's that 4th point that throws it off. Okay. Let's kind of see how we're going to use this in on the test, like how you're going to see it. All right, so the first one says, name a line that is not contained in plane N. So plane N, this is like the letter I was talking about. That N is not a point. That is the name of the plane. And so a line that is not in that plane would be this one right here. This line right here is not in that plane. So you would say AE with a line over it, or you could say EA with a line over it. It's going through. Think about like a pencil sticking through a piece of paper. Name 2 different ways to name a plane that contains point B. So we're naming this plane in 2 different ways. So one way is you can just write plane N. But another way is any 3 points not on the same line. So I can name it plane B, C, D. And it doesn't matter the order. I can call it DCB. Okay, name 3 collinear points. So we're looking for 3 points that are on the same line. So this would be point A, point B, and point E. Excuse me, not C. A, B, E. Name 2 lines that intersect and the point where they intersect. So I'm going to do 2 different ones here. So we know that lines CD and CD and CB, and they intersect at point C. So CD and CB intersect at point C, but also AE and BC intersect at point B. So you could have written either one of those. All right, so before we answer number 5, where it says name a set of opposite rays, let's go over what a ray is. So we know that a line extends forever in both directions. Then we also have what's known as a ray. And a ray is part of a line, but it has an end point. Okay, a ray is part of a line, but it has an end point. So let's say this was A and this was S. When you name a ray, you have to start with your end point. So you're going to start with A, so it's going to be AS with a ray over it. Anytime you name a ray, always start with the end point. Opposite rays are 2 rays that share a common endpoint. And and two rays that share a common endpoint, and they're going to go in opposite directions, okay? Now, they're going to form a line. So if this were like AB and this were AC, I would say ray AB and ray AC are opposite rays. And when I say that, I know that they form a line. So this says name a set of opposite rays. So I'm going to name BA, and I'm going to name BE. Those are two rays that are going in opposite directions but have a common endpoint. Okay, I want to do one more thing before ending the video because you're going to have to draw. Like, I'm going to give you a description and you're going to have to draw it. So let's say that it says lines AB and CD are coplanar and intersect at point P. Anytime the word plane or coplanar shows up, then when you do your drawing, you need to draw a plane. Just some kind of square. I usually slant it. And this doesn't give me the name of a plane, so this doesn't have a letter in the corner. But it says line AB. If you're drawing a line, make sure you put arrows on both ends. And CD. So we know that they're in the same plane, are coplanar, and they intersect at P. Okay, anytime you're drawing a line, it needs to have arrows on both ends. And anytime you're labeling a point, it needs to be a capital letter. The only time you're going to use a lowercase is if I called something line and maybe line F. And so when I do that, I'm going to have arrows on both ends, and it's just going to be a lowercase f. But if it's talking about line CD or DC, you're going to have arrows on both ends, but you're going to have two points, and they're going to be capital letters. All right, I hope that helps a little bit. We'll continue to go over this in class.